The kingdom of Eldoria had been silent for as long as anyone could remember. Its golden towers, once gleaming under the sun, now seemed muted beneath a permanent veil of twilight. The rivers that once sang through the valleys moved slowly, heavy with shadows. People spoke in whispers of a curse that had touched the royal line, and of a king who ruled with solemn eyes, as if the weight of the world rested upon his shoulders. That king was Alaric. King Alaric moved through the halls of his palace like a shadow among shadows. His robes, dark and embroidered with silver threads, brushed against the cold marble floor. Courtiers bowed and murmured their greetings, yet he barely noticed them. His mind was heavy with memories that refused to fade, memories of joy stolen, promises broken, and love lost to a cruel twist of fate. One chilly morning, when the mist hung low over the castle gates, a small figure appeared. A child, no more than 7 or 8, trudged through the fog, her tiny boots soaked with dew. Her clothes were patched, worn, but her eyes glowed with a strange determination. She clutched a folded piece of paper tightly in her small hands. The guards at the gate hesitated, unsure what to do. "I have a letter for the king," the child said, her voice clear and urgent. "It's very important. Please. Can you take it?" The guards exchanged glances. Many had seen strange children in the woods lost, perhaps, or enchanted, but none as brave as this one. Finally, one of them sighed and motioned her forward. "Follow me. The king will decide." When the child was led into the throne room, King Alaric was seated on his high chair, staring at the dim light filtering through the stained glass windows. He did not look up at first. The courtiers whispered, some scornful, others curious. "What is this?" murmured a minister. "A street urchin comes with a letter. Shall we not send her away?" But before anyone could react further, the child knelt respectfully, holding the letter out like a treasure. Her small hands shook slightly, but her eyes never wavered. "King Alaric," she said softly. "Can you read this? It's very important. Please." Alaric's stern face softened, though only slightly. He took the letter with gloved hands. The child bowed deeply and retreated a few steps, her eyes never leaving him. He broke the seal carefully, unfolding the worn paper. The ink was faded, the handwriting delicate, yet every word seemed to carry weight far beyond its size. The letter spoke in quiet urgency. Yet there was something more, a tone of innocence and deep understanding, as if the writer had seen into the heart of the world. It spoke of hope, of forgiveness, of truths long hidden. And then it spoke of a woman, a figure from Alaric's past, whose absence had left a shadow over his soul. As he read, the king felt something he had not felt in years. A stirring of emotion that was equal parts pain and longing. His eyes glistened, but he did not allow tears to fall. The courtiers noticed the change in him and murmured among themselves. This was a king, stoic and unyielding. Yet a child's words had unsettled him. After a long silence, Alaric folded the letter carefully, pressing it to his chest. "Where did you find this?" he asked, his voice quieter than it had been in decades. "In the forest," the child replied. "My mother told me to bring it to you," she said. "She said you would know what to do." Alaric's heart tightened. Memories of a woman, Lady Seraphine, flashed before his eyes. She had been his love long ago, radiant and wise, her laughter like sunlight through leaves. But fate had been cruel. She had disappeared suddenly, leaving only questions and regrets behind. He had mourned her silently, letting his grief harden into duty. The child's words were not just a message, they were a bridge to the past, a reminder of what he had lost. Yet, they also carried a quiet hope. The letter suggested that the curse over Eldoria might be undone, that joy could return to a land that had long known only shadows. But the path would not be easy, and the price of inaction could be far greater than he imagined. "Come closer, child," Alaric said at last, his voice steady now, though heavy with emotion. The child obeyed, her small frame shivering slightly in the cold hall. He studied her face. There was something familiar, something that made his chest ache. He had seen the same eyes somewhere before, though he could not place it. "Who is your mother?" he asked, finally. She is someone who loved this kingdom," the child replied. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. "She wanted you to know the truth. She said the kingdom needs you to act, King Alaric." Alaric leaned back in his throne, absorbing her words. His mind raced. Could it be possible that Seraphine had survived all these years? That the darkness that held the land captive could somehow be lifted? The child's courage, her innocence, and her unwavering determination stirred something long dormant within him, a willingness to hope, and perhaps, to love again. He looked at the child, really looked. And for a moment, the stern king was gone. He saw the promise in her eyes, the bridge between past and present. He realized that this small messenger held the key not only to the kingdom's salvation, but also to his own heart. "Stay here tonight," he said finally, his voice gentler than any had heard before. "I will read the letter again and decide the next steps come morning." The child nodded, relief washing over her small face. She had done what she came to do, and now all that remained was to wait. That night, Alaric could not sleep. He wandered through the halls of the palace, the letter clutched tightly in his hands. Shadows moved across the walls like living things, and whispers of the past echoed in the still air. The words of the letter kept returning to him, haunting and insistent. It spoke of choices, of courage, of forgiveness long delayed. And in the quiet of the night, Alaric felt something he had not felt in years. A flicker of hope. Meanwhile, the child sat by the window in a small chamber, gazing out at the twilight kingdom. She did not fully understand the weight of her mission, but she knew it was important. Somewhere in the darkness of the forest, the mother she barely remembered was watching, waiting, and trusting that the king would see the truth. By morning, the castle was alive with whispers. News of the child's arrival had spread like wildfire. Some courtiers feared what this might mean. Others wondered if the king would finally take action to lift the curse. Alaric, however, was already planning. He knew that reading the letter was only the beginning. The words had opened a door to the past, to a love he thought lost forever, and to a path that could change the fate of Eldoria. He summoned his closest advisors, the child at his side. "The kingdom is in need of courage," he said, his voice steady and commanding, though beneath it lay an undercurrent of emotion. "And the answers we seek may lie beyond the walls of this castle. We must act." The child's eyes widened. She had expected the king to simply read the letter and set it aside. Yet he spoke of movement, of action, of confronting shadows long ignored. She could feel the stirrings of something extraordinary, as if the kingdom itself held its breath, waiting for the story to unfold. And then, as Alaric rose from his throne, he felt a sudden chill. The letter seemed to pulse in his hands, as if alive, carrying a message he had yet to fully comprehend. Shadows flickered at the edges of the room, whispering names he had thought forgotten. Among them, the name of Seraphine rose, carried on the faintest wind, barely audible but unmistakable. Alaric froze. His heart thundered in his chest. Could it be possible? Could the woman he had loved, lost, and mourned for so long, still be tied to the fate of his kingdom? The child at his side looked up, sensing the change in him, but she said nothing. She merely waited. The king took a deep breath, steadying himself. The path ahead would be dangerous, uncertain, and filled with shadows, both real and of memory. Yet for the first time in years, he felt something he had not dared to feel. Hope, and with hope came the promise of redemption, of love, and of a future that had long seemed impossible. Cliffhanger. As the first light of dawn touched the towers of Eldoria, a distant voice called through the forest, echoing with a name that Alaric thought he would never hear again. "King Alaric, Seraphine awaits." The morning sun struggled to pierce the thick clouds over Eldoria, casting the castle in a pale, gray light. King Alaric stood on the highest balcony, the letter clutched in his hands, his gaze stretching beyond the walls toward the forest where the child had come from. Every leaf, Every shadow seemed to whisper secrets he had long tried to forget. The child's words had awakened a part of him that had slept for years, a part that remembered love, loss, and the weight of choices unmade. He turned from the balcony, the letter pressed against his chest, and entered the council chamber. Courtiers and advisors were already gathered, whispering and speculating about the child and her mysterious message. Alaric's steps were steady, but his mind was elsewhere. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. "Your Majesty," one advisor said cautiously, "shall we send for the forest guards? Perhaps the child's mother, if she exists, can be brought here?" Alaric shook his head. "No. This cannot be forced. The truth will come willingly, or it will remain hidden." The child's message was a choice, not a demand. "That is what I must respect." The courtiers murmured, but none dared question him further. Alaric unfolded the letter once more. Reading the words aloud in the quiet chamber, they spoke of courage and forgiveness, of mistakes that must be faced, and truths that could no longer be denied. But they also hinted at a woman, someone bound by magic and sorrow, someone whose fate was entwined with the kingdom itself. The king's mind wandered back to Lady Seraphine. He remembered her laugh, the way sunlight had danced in her hair, and how her eyes had seemed to look into his very soul. She had vanished years ago, leaving no trace but memory and the echo of promises. He had ruled Eldoria since her disappearance. The burden of leadership hardened around his heart, but now that heart stirred again with a feeling he thought long dead: hope. "Take me to the forest," he said suddenly, his voice firm. The courtiers looked startled. "The child came from there, and the answers we seek will not be found within these walls. Prepare my horse. I leave at once." The child's eyes widened in surprise, but she nodded silently. She had not expected the king to act so swiftly, yet she felt a quiet reassurance. Perhaps this was the beginning of what her mother had hoped for. Alaric mounted his steed, the morning wind tugging at his dark cloak, and rode with the child, following on a smaller horse. The forest approached like a living wall of shadow, twisted trees and fog creating shapes that seemed to move on their own. Eldoria's forests were known to be enchanted, and travelers often spoke of voices in the wind and lights that guided or misled the lost. "Do not be afraid," Alaric said to the child as they entered the shadowed path. "Whatever lies ahead, we will face it together." The child nodded, her small hand clutching the reins tightly. "I know, Your Majesty. My mother said you would understand. She said you would not turn away." They rode deeper into the forest, the sunlight dimming under the thick canopy. Strange sounds echoed among the trees: whispers, rustling leaves, and the faint trickle of water. The king felt a strange energy in the air, as if the forest itself was alive and watching. Memories pressed against his mind, memories of Seraphine, of promises, of moments too painful to recall. Yet the child's presence grounded him, reminding him of what was at stake. After hours of riding, they came to a clearing where the air shimmered strangely, as if light itself had softened. The child dismounted, pointing to a small mound covered in flowers and vines. "She is there," the child whispered. Alaric's heart ached with longing and fear. Could it really be her? He approached slowly, each step echoing in the hushed silence. And then he saw her, Lady Seraphine, standing as if she had emerged from the mist itself. Her hair glowed like silver threads in the dim light, and her eyes were full of sorrow and recognition. But there was something different. She seemed ethereal, touched by something beyond human comprehension. "Seraphine," Alaric breathed, unable to step closer. She bowed her head slightly, her voice soft but firm. "Alaric, you have come. I wondered if you ever would." The king's hands shook. "I received her letter," he said, nodding toward the child. "Your daughter. She brought me the words. She said you wanted me to know the truth." Seraphine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Yes. The truth is heavy, Alaric. I was bound to the curse to protect Eldoria from a darkness that could have destroyed everything. I could not return, not until the kingdom's heart had hope again." Alaric's chest tightened. "Bound by a curse?" She nodded. I have been neither alive nor fully gone. Trapped between worlds. Only the courage and love of those who remain can bring me back. The child stepped forward, holding both their hands. Father, Mother, please. The kingdom waits, and we are stronger together. Her small voice carried an authority that seemed to command the wind itself. Alaric knelt to her level, pressing a hand to her shoulder. You've shown me the way, little one. We will not fail. Together, they formed a fragile circle of hope amid the shadows. But as Alaric reached for Seraphine, a sudden chill swept through the clearing. The trees seemed to bend, shadows twisting unnaturally, as if the forest itself resisted their presence. A whisper drifted through the air, a voice both ancient and familiar. Alaric, you were warned. Not all truths bring freedom. The king froze, fear and determination mingling in his heart. Seraphine's gaze met his, filled with both longing and sorrow. The curse is not just my own, she said quietly. It lies in the land, in the heart of Eldoria, and in the choices you must make. Only courage, love, and sacrifice will break it. Alaric's hands clenched, his jaw tight. He had ruled the kingdom with discipline, with fear as a shield. But now he understood that power alone could not save it. He needed something deeper, something that came from the heart. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope that love could indeed be stronger than darkness. The child looked between them, her small voice firm. We cannot wait. The shadows are growing stronger. The longer we delay, the harder it will be to save the kingdom and mother. Alaric drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of his crown and the responsibility it represented. He stood taller, resolve hardening in his chest. Then we begin now, he said, his voice carrying authority, hope, and something that had long been absent, faith. Seraphine stepped closer, her hand brushing his. It was a touch that sparked memories and longing alike, yet also a reminder of the delicate line they walked. They could not rush. The curse would not yield to impatience. They would have to face fears, shadows, and truths that had been hidden for decades. A sudden movement in the trees drew their attention. Dark figures slithered through the forest, twisting like smoke. Alaric tightened his grip on the letter, then drew a small sword at his side. The child moved instinctively between them, courage shining in her eyes despite her size. Whatever comes, Alaric said quietly, we face it together, as a family, as a kingdom. The shadows paused, as if sensing his resolve, then vanished into the depths of the forest, leaving behind an eerie silence. But Alaric knew this was only the beginning. The curse would test them in ways they could not yet imagine, and the path to redemption and reunion would be steep and dangerous. As they set up camp in the clearing, the child nestled between them. Alaric could not help but glance at Seraphine. Her eyes met his, and in them, he saw hope, fear, and a fragile trust that had taken years to build. He realized that the journey ahead was not only about saving the kingdom but also about saving their hearts from the mistakes, fears, and losses that had long held them captive. And as the night fell over Eldoria, a faint voice seemed to echo across the trees, a whisper only the heart could hear. Face the darkness, or it will consume all you love. Alaric gripped the letter once more, feeling the pulse of its words, the promise it carried, and the weight of the choices to come. Tomorrow, the journey deeper into the forest would begin. Tomorrow, the shadows would challenge them in ways they could not yet see. But for now, in the quiet of the night, hope fragile and trembling breathed in the hearts of the king, the woman, and the child who had brought the kingdom its first light in decades. Cliffhanger. As the fire crackled and shadows danced, a faint, sorrowful melody floated through the trees, a song only Seraphine could hear. It was a call from the curse itself, reminding them that time was running out, and that the darkness would not surrender without a fight. The forest grew darker as King Alaric, Seraphine, and the child ventured deeper. Mist curled around twisted trees like silver smoke, and the air carried a chill that seeped through their clothes and into their bones. The forest seemed alive, watching, waiting. Shadows shifted at the edges of vision, and strange whispers floated through the leaves, speaking in voices that were almost human but not quite. Alaric tightened his cloak and looked at Seraphine. "Are you sure we should continue?" he asked. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword. Not because he expected to fight with steel, but because the act grounded him. Seraphine nodded, though her eyes were cautious. "This is where the curse is strongest," she said softly. "The further we go, the more we will see what binds me in this land. The darkness will test us. We must be ready to face truths we may not want to see." The child, walking between them, glanced up with quiet confidence. "I am not afraid," she said simply. "Mother taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting even when you are afraid." Alaric felt a pang in his chest. How had a child, so small and fragile, carried wisdom that he, the king, had forgotten in years of ruling? He swallowed, nodding, and led the way. They reached a part of the forest where the trees grew impossibly tall, their trunks twisted and gnarled. A faint light shimmered ahead, flickering like a memory that could not settle. Seraphine paused, her hand hovering over Alaric's arm. "We are close," she whispered. "The heart of the curse lies just beyond this grove. Once we step forward, there will be no turning back." Alaric nodded, determination tightening his jaw. "I am ready," he said. The child took his other hand, forming a chain of courage between them. Together, they stepped into the glowing grove. The world seemed to change at once. Shadows thickened, and the air grew heavy with magic. Figures began to emerge from the darkness, ghostly. Twisting forms that bore the weight of sorrow and anger. They were not fully alive, yet not completely gone. Alaric realized with a jolt that these were remnants of those lost to the curse over the centuries, souls trapped between worlds. The figures whispered, their voices a chorus of regret and accusation. "You failed us. You left her behind." Alaric's heart ached. He raised his voice, strong and steady, though filled with emotion. "I did not abandon her," he shouted. "I acted to protect what remained of Eldoria. I mourned her every day, and I have carried my failure like a stone on my heart." The shadows shivered, as if considering his words. Seraphine stepped closer to him. "The curse does not forgive easily," she said. "It is not only the land that suffers, it is those who love it, and those who fail to act when they should." A sudden movement caught Alaric's eye. A shadow shifted, separating from the others. It formed into a figure tall, imposing, and cloaked in darkness. Its face was hidden, yet its presence radiated a weight that made Alaric's chest tighten. "I am the keeper of the curse," the figure said, its voice echoing in the grove. "Many have tried to undo what was done, yet none have succeeded. Your love alone will not free her, King. You must confront the choices that bound her and yourself to this fate." Alaric stepped forward, sword lowered, heart pounding. "Tell me what I must do," he said. "I will face it, no matter the cost." The shadow seemed to study him, then slowly gestured toward the grove. The ground trembled, and suddenly visions appeared in the mist. Moments from the past, choices Alaric had made, and moments he had not dared to remember. There was Seraphine, bright and full of life, reaching for him but always slipping away, trapped by a spell he had not understood at the time. Alaric saw his own pride, his fear of failure, and the walls he had built around his heart. He saw the sorrow in Seraphine's eyes as she disappeared into the curse's grip, and he understood for the first time how his choices had contributed to her suffering. Tears blurred his vision. "I see it now," he whispered. "I understand. I was afraid, and I let it keep us apart. But I will not make that mistake again. I will face the darkness, and I will not let her be lost." Seraphine stepped forward, her hand reaching for his. "Alaric, if your heart wavers, we cannot succeed. You must believe not only in me, but in yourself. Trust in what you feel, and in the courage you have found again." The child smiled softly. Father, Mother, together, we can break this. Her words carried a quiet power, a belief that made the air itself seem lighter, if only slightly. Alaric closed his eyes and took a deep breath, letting go of pride and fear. He thought of Seraphine, of the child, and of the kingdom. The curse was not merely a spell or shadow, it was sorrow, regret, and pain, made tangible by years of neglect. To undo it, he would need to embrace love and forgiveness in their purest forms. When he opened his eyes, he faced the shadow fully. "I accept my past," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "I accept my failures. I will not hide from them, and I will fight for her, for our child, and for Eldoria. I will not let fear control my heart." The shadow remained still for a moment, then slowly receded, dissolving into the mist. A soft light began to spread through the grove, warm and gentle, carrying the scent of flowers and sunlight. Seraphine stepped closer to Alaric, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and love. "You have taken the first step," she said. "The curse begins to loosen. But there is more to do. The shadows will not vanish completely until the source is faced directly." Alaric nodded, understanding that the journey was far from over. "Then, we continue," he said firmly. "I will face it, no matter the danger." As they moved forward, the forest seemed less threatening, though the weight of the curse still lingered in the air. The child ran ahead, her laughter light and pure, guiding them through the mist. For the first time in years, Alaric felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Fragile yet unyielding, flickering in his chest. But the deeper they went, the more the forest revealed its secrets. Strange symbols appeared, carved into the trees, glowing faintly with magic. Whispers of voices long gone filled the air, speaking in riddles and half-truths. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows, the source of the curse watched, waiting to challenge them in ways they could not yet imagine. Seraphine paused suddenly, her hand on Alaric's arm. "We are close," she whispered. "I can feel it. The one who bound me, the one who wove this curse into the land, is near." Alaric tightened his grip on his sword, but he did not move forward hastily. "Then we face it together," he said. "As a family, we will not falter." The child nodded, her small face serious. "I am ready," she said simply. "For Mother. For you. For Eldoria." A distant rumble echoed through the forest, a low sound that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Shadows twisted violently, and the light around them dimmed as if the grove itself held its breath. The forest had accepted their courage, but it would not yield easily. The final test was coming, a confrontation that would demand their strength, their hearts, and the love they carried for each other. Alaric looked at Seraphine, then at the child. "Whatever comes, we stay together," he said. His voice was calm, commanding, yet filled with emotion. "We will face the darkness, and we will not let it destroy us." The forest fell silent, waiting for the next move. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Unlike the other shadows, this one was solid and alive. Its eyes glowed with a cold, cruel light, and its presence radiated power. Alaric recognized at once that this was the source of the curse, the one who had trapped Seraphine and cast Eldoria into twilight. The figure spoke, its voice like grinding stone. "So, the king finally arrives. Do you truly believe your love, your courage, can undo what I have built? The curse is eternal, and the shadows will consume all who oppose me." Alaric raised his sword, though his strength came more from heart than steel. "I do not face you with pride or arrogance," he said steadily. "I face you with love, courage, and the promise to protect those I care for. That is more powerful than any shadow." Seraphine stepped beside him, her hand brushing his. "Together," she whispered, "we are stronger than you imagine." The child held their hands tightly, forming a chain of hope. And in that moment, the three of them, the king, the woman, and their child stood united against the darkness that had haunted Eldoria for so long. Cliffhanger. The shadow advanced, its form growing larger and more menacing, its voice echoing in the forest. Then let us see if your love can truly challenge eternity. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the shadow loomed before them, larger and darker than anything Alaric had ever seen. Its eyes glowed with an unearthly light, and the air around it seemed to hum with power. The mist swirled violently, carrying the whispers of lost souls, warnings, and despair. Alaric tightened his grip on his sword, though he knew that steel alone could not defeat what stood before him. Seraphine's hand rested on his arm, her fingers cold but steady, and the child's small hands gripped theirs both, forming an unbroken chain of courage. Together, they faced the darkness that had bound Eldoria in sorrow for decades. You believe your love can undo what I have built? The shadow boomed, its voice echoing through the grove like thunder. You are nothing but flesh and memory. Your hearts are fragile, and your hope is fleeting. The curse is eternal. Alaric stepped forward, chest firm, heart resolute. Love is not fragile, he said. It endures, it forgives, and it strengthens. You may have bound this land in shadow, but you cannot bind what we feel for each other or for this kingdom. The shadow recoiled slightly, as if taken aback by his words. Its form twisted, changing constantly, revealing glimpses of past sorrows, failures, and fears. Alaric felt the weight of his own regrets pressing against him, the years he had spent ruling alone, the pride that had kept him from seeking Seraphine sooner, the countless moments he had doubted himself, but he did not falter. He looked at Seraphine, standing tall despite her own chains, and at the child, whose trust in them never wavered. We are stronger than you imagine, he said, because we face the truth together. The shadow howled, and the ground beneath them shook. Trees bent unnaturally, and the mist thickened into almost solid shapes, attempting to separate them, to pull them into despair. Yet they stood firm, united by a bond, forged in hope, courage, and love. Seraphine stepped closer, her voice rising in a melody that carried through the forest, soft but powerful. Alaric, remember the words of the letter. The curse is not just a spell, it is sorrow, regret, and fear made real. To defeat it, we must embrace our hearts fully, forgive the past, trust the present, and have faith in the future. Alaric closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Memories of Seraphine's laughter, the child's innocent smile, the kingdom's muted splendor, all of it converged in his heart. He felt the weight of guilt, the sting of lost years, and the sharp edge of fear. But above it all, he felt something stronger. Love, unyielding and true. Opening his eyes, he spoke to the shadow with unwavering resolve. I accept the past, I forgive myself and others, and I fight for the life we can have together. The curse has no power over hearts that are united by love and hope. The shadow shrieked, a sound that split the air, and for a moment, it seemed to falter. The mist swirled faster, the whispers became frantic, and then, slowly, the dark figure began to shrink. Its glowing eyes dimmed as the light of their courage pressed against the darkness. The child stepped forward, her small voice clear and commanding. You cannot win. The kingdom will not fall, because love and hope are stronger than your shadows. The shadow shrank further, now no taller than the trees themselves, twisting violently, trying one last time to spread fear and sorrow. But Alaric and Seraphine stepped forward together, hands intertwined, their hearts and spirits open and unwavering. A brilliant light burst from Seraphine, pure and radiant, touching the trees, the mist, and even the shadow itself. The darkness shrieked one final time, a sound that echoed through the forest like the breaking of chains, and then it dissolved into nothing, leaving only the gentle hum of life returning to the grove. Alaric fell to his knees, exhausted but alive. Seraphine knelt beside him, her hand brushing his cheek. The child ran to them, laughter spilling like sunlight through the mist. They embraced, three hearts beating together in harmony, a family reunited. The forest itself seemed to sigh in relief. Light filtered through the trees, brighter than it had been in decades, casting golden patterns on the ground. The rivers that ran through Eldoria beyond the forest shimmered once again, reflecting a world no longer trapped in twilight. Birds returned to the branches, singing, and flowers bloomed where shadows had held sway. Seraphine stood slowly, her form fully human once more, her eyes shining with gratitude and love. "It is done," she said softly. "The curse has ended. Eldoria is free." Alaric rose beside her, feeling the strength and warmth return to his body. "Thanks to you," he said. "To both of you. And thanks to the child, who carried hope when it seemed impossible." The child beamed, her small hands holding theirs tightly. "I just brought the letter," she said simply. "But I knew you could do it." Alaric smiled, feeling a joy he had long thought lost. He turned to Seraphine. "And now, we can begin again. Together, without shadows between us." Seraphine took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his, and they looked at each other with a depth of understanding that words could not capture. The years of separation, sorrow, and longing melted away in that moment, leaving only love, trust, and the promise of a new beginning. As they began their journey back to the castle, the child skipping happily ahead, Alaric felt a sense of renewal. The kingdom had been saved, but more importantly, their hearts had been restored. He understood that true strength was not in power or titles, but in courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to face one's own vulnerabilities. When they reached the castle, the people of Eldoria gathered in awe, sensing that something miraculous had occurred. Light shone in every corner, and for the first time in decades, laughter and joy filled the air. Alaric and Seraphine walked together through the gates, the child at their side, and the citizens bowed, not only to their king and queen but to the love and hope that had brought the kingdom back to life. In the private chambers later, Alaric held Seraphine close, feeling the warmth and softness of her presence. "We have so much to rebuild," he said, "but as long as we are together, there is nothing we cannot face." Seraphine smiled, her head resting on his chest. "And now, the future belongs to us. Eldoria, our family, and the love we have fought so hard to reclaim." The child nestled between them, yawning but smiling, a reminder of the courage and hope that had started it all. Alaric pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, feeling the bond that united them, a bond stronger than any curse. Outside, the sun finally broke fully through the clouds, casting a golden light over Eldoria's towers, rivers, and forests. The curse that had held the kingdom in darkness for decades was gone, leaving only the beauty of a world reborn. And in the castle, a king, a queen, and a child laughed together, hearts light and unburdened for the first time in years. Though the shadows had tested them, they had emerged stronger, their love unbroken, their courage unwavering. Alaric understood now that hope was not a fragile thing. It was the fire that could burn through any darkness, the light that could guide lost souls home. And as the first stars began to appear in the twilight sky, Alaric whispered to Seraphine, "Whatever comes next, we face it together. Always." Seraphine smiled, her eyes reflecting the golden light. "Always," she echoed. The kingdom was safe, the curse lifted, and their hearts, once heavy with sorrow, now soared free. Eldoria would remember this day not as a day of fear or loss, but as the day courage, love, and hope conquered darkness. Cliffhanger. Emotional hook. Even as peace settled over the kingdom, a faint wind carried whispers from the forest, a reminder that darkness can return if hearts falter. But for now, the family stood united, stronger than any shadow, ready to meet the future with love and courage.